Welcome back to the series in which I swatch all the M-grams. Now, obviously, we have finished swatching the M-grams, but like with the core, I wanted to give you guys a couple more episodes talking about color wheel palettes and how you can pick between the colors. So this is going to be the episode where we talk about color wheel palettes. And here's the M-gram color wheel palette. Few things first. This is not, in my mind, as good a color wheel palette as, say, my one that I use all the time or the one that I made with core, which I will link up here. This, I wasn't as happy with it. The problem is that they don't have a real magenta color. You can have Quinacridone Rose or the permanent alizarin crimson, but they're not quite right. So they all feel a little bit out. I really just debated about whether to make this into a video or just say that you can't make a color wheel palette, but I felt like, well, it's 80% there, so I'm going to put it on and then you guys can decide whether it's useful or not. Another thing is that there was a lot of questions about, well, why would I bother having all the colors neutralize each other? And I think I miscommunicated the purpose of color wheel palette in the core video. The purpose of color wheel palette, one, you don't have to have all these colors. I put together an entire color wheel so that you can find a pairing of colors that neutralize each other. You might want to take a couple of pairs that are useful to you, or you might want all of it and then use that as a framework for adding the colors you want. Two, you don't have to stick these together. These colors are just references of starting points. So for example, like Quinacridone Rose, you could replace that with permanent alizarin crimson if you prefer that. The other thing is, a lot of people said, why would I want to be able to neutralize all the colors when I want bright colors and I don't really want neutral colors? It's exactly for that reason why I think the color wheel palette is great, because if you want to avoid what people might call muddy colors, the neutralized colors, then this is the way to do it. So for example, say you want both Cadmium Red and Turquoise in your painting because they're complementary colors and they look great on paintings, but you don't want them to get all mixed up and produces neutralized colors. Then what you do is you put down Cadmium Red wherever you want those colors in one go, let that dry, and then throw on the Turquoise once that paint's all dried, so that the two colors, they might overlap each other and create a little bit of neutralized area, which, by the way, it's actually really good to have those neutralized areas if you want to brushen up your painting. But otherwise, they don't really mix, so you get to actually see both of the colors. I hope all these things make sense. If you have any further questions or queries about color wheel palette, just ask down in the comments and I will address them either in the comments or on a follow-up video. Let's talk about the M-gram color wheel palette. As I said, it's about 80%, and there are a couple of things I want to talk about. The A bracket well, in the core video, there was quite some uproar about the fact that I didn't choose Ultramarine Violet and I chose Dioxazine Purple. As I say, these color wheel palettes, I choose them based on my taste. So obviously, some people might want Ultramarine Violet, some people might want Dioxazine Purple. I normally pick Dioxazine Purple because some brands don't have a blue enough Ultramarine Violet. Like Core doesn't have an Ultramarine Violet that's blue enough. But M-gram does. M-gram has a nice blue one. By the way, you can use a reddy one. You just need to adjust your A well so that these two actually neutralize each other. So for this wheel, I put both just to show you guys that you can have both. The other unusual thing I would say is that in the bracket E and bracket F wheel, we have permanent green light rather than a hooker's green, which is what we normally have here. But I tested it out and the permanent green light works much better for M-gram. So we have Gamboge, Azure Orange, Scarlet Pyrrol, Cadmium Red, Quinacridone Rose, Quinacridone Violet, Ultramarine Violet, Ultramarine Blue, Phthalocyanine Blue, turquoise and permanent green light, as well as a Hansa yellow, because we were missing a cool yellow, and that is kind of a useful color to have in your primaries. So we have the primary colors. The cool primaries are Hansa yellow, Queen rose, and phthalo blue, and then the warm primaries will be the Gamboge, Cadmium Red, Ultramarine blue. And I've mixed up all the different colors that you can make from just these 6 colors. You get great bright blues and muted blues. You get gorgeous, gorgeous violets and nice fresh orange colors as well. So we have these colors. Let's look at how they neutralize. Here are the color mixes for all 12 of the color wheel palette colors, and they neutralize really well. The Ultramarine Violet and Gamboge, because Ultramarine Violet is quite low tinting strength, you're going to get only a very light kind of color, whereas colors like Cadmium Red and Turquoise have insanely like almost black, very, very strong neutralization. But as you can see, they all neutralize pretty well. Just like in the core video, I am going to show you alternate colors for these colors. So if you don't like my choice of, say, you don't want to use Cadmium Red, but you want to know what still complementary to turquoise, I'm going to go through that right now. First of all, let's look at the B well. We have the Ultramarine blue as a complementary, but you can also use the Anthraquinone blue as well, and that makes a really nice neutralized color. We then go to well C. So if you want an alternate color here, you can have the Phthalocyanine blue or the Phthalocyanine blue red shade, and that makes a really nice strong neutralized almost black color. And then for D well, for the Cadmium Red, if you don't want to use turquoise, you actually can use cobalt teal. It neutralizes well, but it neutralizes in a dual tone way. So you see the red and you see the cobalt, but it's definitely neutralized. So if the turquoise is a little bit strong, cobalt teal might be fun. It's got lots of granulation. So give that one a go. For the F well, instead of the permanent green light, you can use Sap Green, which makes this dark green color, and then a little bit of Hooker's green, but it's really hard to get the balance right on neutralizing it fully. The reason why there isn't an A well one is because there's only Gamboge and Ultramarine Violet pair. For the A bracket well, we have the Gamboge, but you can also pick the Cadmium Yellow or the Cadmium Yellow Deep, and they're both going to neutralize these Ultramarine Violet quite well. I think the Cadmium Yellow Deep neutralizes it very well as well. For bracket B, which is an Ultramarine Blue, to neutralize that, you can use the Azure Orange or the Indian Yellow, and that neutralizes the Ultramarine Blue nicely as well. For bracket C, the Phthalocyanine blue, to neutralize that, you can use the Scarlet Pyrrol, or we have 2 options. You can use the Cadmium Orange or the Cadmium Red Light. And for D, you can use the Cadmium Red, or if that's a little bit too purpley red for you, you can totally use the Scarlet Pyrrol, which is a lot more orangey red color. You might be wondering, well, what color should I use as the A well if you use the Dioxazine purple? And here is some of the rough tests that I did. And I would say that you get a really good neutralization with the Azure Yellow as well as the Hooker's Green. So those 2 will be a good choice for your A well, although Hooker's Green is a little bit weird color to have in your A well because that's usually yellow. In case I haven't covered it, this is the pile of tests I did to come up with the color wheel. So I'm just going to quickly show them, and you can pause on each sheet to figure out if you see a sheet that you want to have a look, then you can just pause and have a look at the color mixes in case the color mixes I chose for you guys isn't the one that is to your taste. So I'm just going to quickly go through them. Just pause as you need to. Cream violets with cream rose. There are a couple of colors that hasn't been labeled, and I'm really sorry I didn't do that. Like here, I think this was just Hooker's Green to see if they will do neutralize or not. Cream violet neutralizes really well with Hooker's Green as well. Ultramarine blue and phthalo blue. Ultramarine violet. And Dioxazine purple. So I hope that is useful to you. By the way, be careful about swapping out colors. You can totally swap out the color suggestions that I've recommended on here. So let's say for the bracket B, well, you don't want Azure Orange, you pick Indian Yellow. That's totally cool. But if you start putting other colors in, you're going to have to do your own tests. So please don't write to me saying you swapped out colors outside of what I recommended and now the palette doesn't neutralize each other, or the colors don't neutralize each other and it's my fault. It's not. Okay, so if you want to make sure that it neutralizes, stick to the color suggestions I made earlier. But it is a reference point from which I hope you create your own palettes that work for you. So that's it for the Colour Wheel palette for M. Graham. In the next episode, I'm going to show you the different tinting strengths and the unique colors and stuff, so it can help you make it a little bit easier to narrow down the colors you might want to buy from M. Graham. Thank you so much for watching this video. Do let me know in the comments down below what you think of the Colour Wheel palette, and if you have any further questions about how this works and what is the point of a Colour Wheel palette. Do please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye!